I think of Jim as almost MacGyver-like, recognizing a problem, coming up with solutions to that problem.
He's a bridge builder. He connects people, he connects ideas, he connects thoughts, he connects the structure of information with the use of that information. And you can see that through his work.
Jim, I think, is the best advisor anyone can ask for. He is very supportive of his mentees, his trainees. He never let us down. He always shows his enthusiasm and his passion for what he does. He's not afraid of dreaming about the next thing that he wants to do and fights for it.
Whether it's the medical entities dictionary or putting an EMR on a web browser, Jim just does it.
He believed in something. He stayed with it, but he embellished that theme with new ideas coming in from the new areas.
Now he runs a brand new institute at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. They didn't really have anything quite like it till he went there.
So I was at Columbia University in what ultimately was called the Department of Biomedical Informatics for 20 years, and it was a great place, and it's still a great place. When I was working with terminologies early on, they were often a mess. They had redundancy, they had misspellings, they had ambiguity, and I then went back to my knowledge representation class from Harvard and thought about, well, what if we represented these things using knowledge?
Jim's version of this was a philosophy called the Medical Entities Dictionary, which at the time was a very novel way to say that there are a series of terms in the EHR that need to be standardized.
What Jim did was architected a system where at the interface, where a clinician was actually interacting with a computer system and placing a patient order or recording a patient process, there was a small clickable button on the screen that the clinician could use to link to the literature.
And that light kind of came on, and that kind of set off work at Columbia initially, but also started to influence work elsewhere with SNOMED and LOINC and RxNorm that looked at how they would represent the actual meanings of the terms. You could audit them, you could figure out if things were classified right, you could figure out if you had redundancy.
It was an amazing time. Everybody had fun together. We were doing amazing things. It was Camelot.
Jim then went to the NIH, and one of the first things that he did was recognize they had nothing that was like the med. And so that became the focus of one of his projects at the NIH.
He drew on resources that were available from our repository here at the National Library of Medicine and made sure that as a clinician was caring for a patient and documenting that care, the info button could bring context-specific information into the environment where the individual was facing a complex clinical challenge.
One day a week I would go over there and try and hide and do informatics research, and that was a great opportunity. But I started trying to use the data in my repository to answer research questions, and I found that one of the stumbling blocks was that the notes in the electronic health record were just not adequate for really understanding what was going on with the patient. And that made me start thinking about how I wanted to change things.
So he's contributed in ways that show that not only did he get into it early, but he made it kind of his own in very positive ways and has continued to do so to this day.
As a New Yorker, I certainly never thought that I would end up in Alabama, but it seems like I keep moving south. I couldn't think of a good reason not to go take a look, and when I took a look, I was very impressed with what was there and with the people, and again, been another great experience.
In one of our phone calls, he said, "Can you believe they have nothing like a medical entities dictionary?" And I'm like, "Well, Jim, I'm certain they're going to have one by the time you leave."
He also has been since 2000 an editor with me of the Journal of Biomedical Informatics. He's been a fantastic associate editor. He's a go-to guy for a lot of the more clinically oriented articles.
So why is Jim a pioneer in informatics?
Pioneers see a target, a direction they want to go, and they bring along the proper tools to get there.
Jim has been a pioneer in informatics really because of the way in which his curiosity has allowed him to address the field. I always think of Jim as sort of a one-man informatics show.
He was the first informatician, clinician informatician, who actually brought the attention of cognitive research, detailed cognitive research, and cognitive science research to the field of informatics.
I think there are very few people in any field, in any science, where you can actually say that person changed the way the entire field thinks about the problem. Not just what the answer is, but what the questions are and how we approach those questions. And Jim's work on the medical entities dictionaries and the Desiderata papers completely changed the way we approach terminology.
His knowledge, his passion about what he does, his way of dreaming about it and talking about it and smiling about it, all of it.
Computers are great at crunching numbers and executing logic, but when we try to make them work in the real world, in a domain like medicine, there are a lot of things that are fuzzy and inexact. When I'm explaining what informatics is to people who are not in the field, I often say that it's about trying to explain to the computer what it is that we're trying to do in healthcare, particularly taking care of patients.